Hi friends, welcome to Awkward Family Conversations. I'm here with my dad, Rhett Bratt, who graduated from Beloit College with a degree in English Comp.
And economics and management.
Well, the major was English Comp.
They were a double major.
You were a double major?
I was.
I messed up.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right. Thank you very much. Nice to see you, Ed. This is my youngest daughter, Addie.
And your granddaughter.
What's that?
And your granddaughter.
And her cat, Claire. Addie is sadly has zero fast twitch muscle fiber in her entire body.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
This is the first show of Awkward Family Conversations, and we're already feeling a little awkward. So we're living the dream. This is going to happen as we can make it happen, and we'll be having an intergenerational discussion, as it were, on topics of interest, mainly to young people, millennials and Gen Z Zoomers, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there. What's our topic for today, Ed?
Our topic today is, why does it feel to millennials and Zoomers that life is just going to suck forever and then we die?
I see. So an
really
easy,
light, fun way to introduce the series, huh?
A very, very, a light topic, something we can just sort of banter about. That's true. Well, it is true that you guys are up against it. I do no more than 2 minutes of preparation for these for this, and was able to find a couple of things, it's not great, that's for sure. You guys are up against it, no question about it. When you look at past generations, the last three generations prior to the Zoomers, there's not enough. You guys haven't aged enough. Eddie is in the vanguard of the Zoomers. They haven't reached sort of that the point where they're have enough history to measure. But if you take the three previous generations, baby boomers, Gen X, and the millennials, you can see that intergenerational wealth, and of course wealth is not income, it's just the total value of all the assets that you own. And that could be investments, and it could be property, it could be art, and all kinds of other stuff. But you can see that as folks have hit 30, generations have hit 30 years old, 35 years old, 40, etc., which is the x-axis there. Baby boomers have owned a greater proportion of wealth than either Gen X or the millennials. Millennials are trailing even Gen X. This is a little bit deceptive in that these generations are not all the same size, and so you would expect larger generations to have more wealth just because there'd be more people in them. Baby boomers and millennials are roughly the same size. Gen X is not. But even if you account for the difference between the number of people in each generation there, you'll see that baby boomers, for every percentage point of the U.S. total population, they owned 0.68% of wealth. Whereas if you look at Gen X, that ratio is 0.41. So really, it's baby boomers own twice as much wealth at the same point in time than Gen X is, and you can see millennials, who are an even bigger generation than Gen X, are trailing badly. You'd want to kind of compare baby boomers and millennials together to get a sense for their, because those are very roughly the same number of folks in that. So any way you slice it, it's a tough sled. But we can look even more broadly at all the generations that have come before, and look at the economic, the economy, the general economy that each of these generations faced in the first 15 years of their working life. So you can see the GI generation, what's been labeled the GI generation, those people that were born 1900 to 1924, and then started their work 15 years, it would be like 18 years after that. So these numbers would be 1919 through 1943, and then extend for 15 years. they killed it. The economy, and that was the economy that came out of the Great Depression, and which was fueled by World War II. So a huge amount of production. What we're measuring here is gross domestic product per person and how much that grew in the time they were in the time at the beginning of their career. And you can see that millennials are the absolute worst when you compare them against all the generations that have come before. And you can also see that the boomers have had it relatively easy. So this is what you're doing. Addie, you've raised your hand. What can I help you with?
My question is there a graph that shows the generational per capita avocado toast consumption? Because I've been told that's where millennials are wasting our money.
That's where the millennials are, so let's, we'll have many more topics ahead, hopefully. And we'll talk about, kind of individual choices and things like that. But just, in terms of the topic for today, which was, why does it feel like you guys are living, why does life suck so much for those young adults who are trying to make their way in the world? It's largely because you're swimming upstream. You have had historically bad economy, and that is translating into a wealth that is lagging significantly prior generations. So
what I'm hearing is it sucks because it sucks.
It sucks because it sucks for a reason. It's not that you're lazy. It's as a generation. It's not that you're entitled and all the other
eating too much avocado toast.
It's not the avocado toast, in other words. Essentially, you guys are up against a depressed economy. Greg Kimbrough, who is a guy that he's an economist, and if you're not following him on Twitter or whatever other platforms you can find him on, you ought to be. He's doing some great work in these kind of generational economics. And he's basically said, you've gone through the millennial generation went through the 9/11 terror attacks, entered the labor market in the recession that happened in the early 2000s. That was when the stock market bubble burst. You had the corporate scandals around Enron and other bad behavior by large companies in the U.S. You had to find work and a job, during that kind of time frame. Then there was the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, 2010. And now, of course, we've got the Corona affected economy as well. So it feels like millennials and Zoomers really struggling to catch a break in the external environment. So, this is all well and good. And you can sit there and bemoan the fact that, the external environment that we all live in really sucks right now. And that's true. What's that?
I will do that.
Oh, will you? Yeah. So why don't you share some of the story? I mean, what prompted this topic in your mind? What are some of the things what are some of the experience that you and your friends are dealing with?
What made it come to my mind specifically was an experience in one of my classes that has haunted me since then, where my professor was talking to us. We were making a financial plan for our next 5 years post-grad. It's a class of seniors. And he was talking about be careful about how much you should be aiming to make, because you can survive on rice and beans for a couple years, but ultimately you're going to want the same standard of living as your parents. And me, being someone who is at that time was fully aware that I was going into animal care, which is not a highly paid field, and coming from a finance dad where we were able to support a stay-at-home mom and 2 daughters and have us go on vacation yearly and eat out regularly, that is a freaky thing to hear, because there's not really the opportunity in the veterinary care field to live at that level of wealth. So it's what prompted the thought was, am I ever really going to be satisfied with my life if this is what I'm supposed to expect? Or is this just a ticking time bomb of how long I'm going to make my $25,000 a year salary work?
Yeah, wow, there's a lot to unpack in there.
Awkward family conversations.
Yes. Let's talk about the difference between sort of the microclimate and the macroclimate. The microclimate is terrible right It's not going to always stay terrible. Well, I'm sure in future conversations talk about the economic cycle, and the only thing that you can be sure of is that the economic cycle will recover at some point, and we'll have growth and expansion, and there will be more opportunities. And the workforce is going to look a ton different then. You'll have boomers moving basically out of the workforce as they're already doing, and you're going to have the Zoomers moving in. So you'll be a workforce that'll be largely Gen X, Millennial, Zoomer.
And heavily tattooed.
What's that?
And heavily tattooed.
Heavily tattooed, although it's not only young people that have tattoos, Ed. So
I know, that's my point. There's also the thing that we're told, like, oh, if you get tattoos, you won't be employable. But
oh no, you will be.
That's just not the case anymore.
Yeah, those superficial things. Yeah, don't put a lot of stock in those kind of that kind of stuff. I mean, basically, it's generally true. I think, certainly my experience in the corporate America and small businesses that I've worked in both throughout my career. During my career, I've spent time in small businesses, spent time in large companies, and there's an element of, boy, what you got to look good, and you got to, there's it's not non-existent that there's those kind of biases and prejudices, but largely speaking, if you're and you'll hear a lot of me talking, as you have probably throughout your life, talking about intention and the importance of intention. If you're intentional about the work that you're doing, you will find the organizations that will want you for your skill set, the things that you can contribute. Ideally, those people will also help you develop more skills and broaden your capabilities, so you become more valuable through time. And so, while it is true that you can look at the workplaces that look a lot like The Office, TV show, right, which is highly dysfunctional, but you had a lot of people there who were just staying there. They were not managing their career in an intentional way. They were not managing their lives in an intentional way. They were just kind of taking what came as a given and making the best of it. And we're going to talk in a couple of minutes about that's depending where you are in this macroeconomic cycle. Sometimes you got to eat a little crow. Sometimes you got to swallow your pride a little bit to stay working and keep moving forward. When you're swimming upstream, it can be tough. But usually there are positions available for you if you're intentional about it, and they're really interested only in what you can bring to them. In the to the job.
My question to that is, as a vegan, how does one go about eating crow?
Well, I'm told that Beyond Meats is working on a special crow, soy-based crow fillet. So we'll see if maybe that can, maybe they can accommodate.
That's gross.
Oh, that's my girl. All right, very good. The other thing that you were, there was a lot that we were unpacking in that, thing about, I forgot all the pieces to it because there was a lot in there. But one of the things that I think it's important to recognize that even when things are tough, even when you're swimming upstream, there's going to be opportunities for individuals specifically. I mean, if you look at generational metrics and you're looking broad macroeconomic that aggregate the experience, no question, this is a very tough time. It's a tough time in the workplace. And it's a tough time for young people, especially who don't have a ton of experience. The articles that I'm reading are pointing to the fact that when you're looking at the people who are unemployed, they tend to be people of color. They tend to be young people because those people are in jobs that are
non-essential.
No, in fact, the opposite, right? I mean, they are essential, but they're lower skilled jobs. Typically, and there's no, people of color are less well educated, have less opportunities for education, have less, they face discrimination in hiring even today, and so they tend to be employed in those positions that are, we'll call them more disposable, right? I mean, they're not They don't pay as well. They don't offer the same kind of benefits that more professional type jobs that tend to be held by older white men. And so, women, people of color, and young people who lack those job experiences are taking it on the chin right now in terms of employment opportunities. And that sucks. And that's a tough deal. But the thing to remember is that in the aggregate hides a wide range of experiences underneath it. And there will always be opportunity. Even in the most difficult, challenging areas, there are people that find out ways to move themselves forward, to increase their wealth, to develop skills. There's a Harvard Business Review article that I'm going to talk a little bit about now, and we'll put it on the blog that's on our website, and we'll put a link to it so people can look at it themselves. It's from 2008, which is when the Great Recession was really kind of coming down. Everything was kind of coming down there, and it was really about how do you keep your job, or how do you keep working in a time when you're dealing with headwinds. And there's a lot of really good stuff in here. Like everything, I think you're not going to be able to do yourself justice if you're not aware of what you want and what you offer. The more clear you are, the clearer you are in your mind about what you bring to the table and where you want to go with your life, the more that increases your chances pretty dramatically in terms of getting where you want to go. So the path to success in this kind of macro environment is narrower for sure. You're not going to have the same kind of opportunities. Warren Buffett is credited with a quote that is pretty good. He says, "It's only when the tide goes out that you see who's been swimming naked." And in the time that you're, that's not swearing.
No, it's just like, why?
Well, the point is that when things are going good, people tend to
Swim naked?
No, they tend to no. Basically, what he's saying is when things are good, a high tide, lots of water, it hides a lot of things. And people who will have to sharpen the pencil, tighten the belt, use whatever analogy you want during when things get tough and you start having to make choices. It's easier not to make choices when everything's going well, but when you're forced to make choices, and this it applies to layoffs, it applies to companies that fail because they're not as customer centric, or they don't have the resources behind them. When times are good, an awful lot of people, an awful lot of businesses, and a lot of employees can skate by, as opposed to when things are tough, when people have to make conscious choices about what they're going to do, how many people they're going to employ, and who then they do employ. You make decisions as a consumer all the time. If your income is down, you're not gonna buy that avocado toast, maybe. It's or maybe you do. But if you're gonna buy the avocado toast, you're gonna have to do without your seitan or something. So
yeah,
you'll have to make your choices. But when times are good, you can do both, and so you do, and you don't cut it out. But when the tide goes out, then you can find out who is not. Who really is, doing good work and meeting client needs, meeting customer needs, and who isn't. And that's all that I think Warren Buffett meant by the tide going out and exposing. When things get bad, it exposes the weak players, basically, and that's true for us as companies. I mean, you'll see. There's a lot of retailers going out of business now. They were struggling already, but when the economy was good, people were still going to them. When the economy turns bad, people stop going to them, stop spending money, and those are the first ones to fall by the wayside because they don't have the strength. They're not delivering consistent value, so that when people have to choose, when they're just having to choose between A and B instead of being able to do both A and B, they're losing them. But it's going to be true in employees as well. And so, I think if you're thinking intentionally about your career and you're in a macro environment like we're in right now, it's a lot of sort of survival techniques. But by employing them, you'll actually move yourself forward relative to your peers, which is really kind of the measure that matters. I mean, I'm not a particularly competitive person, but I don't think I'm really not.
Right, can we rewind to that? Can we revisit that idea?
We can revisit it at some point, but I want to make my point first here, which is that in our society, and whether it's jobs or whether it's a seat at the ball game or whether it's that avocado toast or that reservation at a restaurant, I mean, there's limited supply of all of those things, and you're going to be competing with people all the time, not consciously, not I'm going to beat that one. It's not a one-on-one competition, but there is an element of competition in there, and the thing to remember is that it's the old saying about, when you're hiking in the wilderness and you come across a bear, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than your friend. And that's kind of what we're talking about, in a workplace. You want to be, you don't have to be the perfect employee, but you have to be better than the people around you if you want to keep your job. So you just had a situation where they laid off a bunch of people at your old doggy daycare, and they didn't lay you off. And what was that? I mean, why do you think they didn't lay you off?
They love me.
But why?
Because I'm lovable. No, their words were that I am flexible and love the dogs and the job, and I make that clear. And that was kind of it. I didn't really ask too many questions. I was like, thanks for the job.
Yeah. But I think there's a lesson in there, and this is one of the things that's in the the Harvard Business article, and it's true. Luck. First of all, luck definitely plays a role in everything we do. It's the 80-10-10 rule, right? 80% of the time you get what you deserve. 10% of the time you get screwed. You don't, you do everything right and you don't get the result that you wanted. And then 10% of the time you take a shortcut, but you still get the result you want. So 90% of the time you get what you want. 80% of the time it's because what you earned. 10% of the time you don't get what you deserve, and that hurts. That's the things we always remember. So luck is always out there for sure. But when you're facing the headwinds or swimming upstream, whatever difficult the way you think about your difficulties around you, there are definitely techniques that you can use to manage that. And the first thing is to lighten up a little bit. Is recognize that you're still going to be good. You're still going to be a decent person here, whether you have a job or not, right? I mean, so you can sit there and worry about, am I going to be able to pay the rent or whatever? You will figure it out. You'll get with roommates. You'll bunk with friends if you have to. These things are these things are, I'll say, temporary. Without, I mean, they're not fleeting always, but there are. They do pass, right? So recognize that they will pass, and there will be opportunities down the line, especially if you're intentional. If you know what you want, you're aware of your strengths and what you bring. Then recognize you want the cat. Yeah, get a cat. That's another thing. That'll help reduce stress. Absolutely.
They do not help with your finances, though.
No, they can be a little bit disruptive to your
pricey. Unless you work in the vet field, and then you get pretty sizable discounts, so it works out all right.
Yeah.
But even that's kind of like, I wouldn't have gotten Claire if I didn't know I could afford her without a 75% discount.
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, and these are things that but you know what's important to you, and you value her companionship, and you're willing to make your choices. You'll sacrifice other things, and we'll talk.
Like people who are allergic to cats.
People who are allergic to cats, and sacrifice those people. Yes. To be able to have those relationships. But
weirdos who don't like cats.
Well, yes. But other things that you can do right now, and when you're facing these headwinds, be versatile, play more than one role, offer to help out doing things that you don't really like to do or that other people don't like to do. If you take, if you do more than one thing, you'll be valuable to your employer. The employer can look at you and say, oh, wow, well, this person, they're a team player, right? They're pitching in, they're helping out. They're offering to do more than just what they were hired to do. Those are great things. One, you can build your skills with that, and you send in the message to your employer, hey, look, I'm willing to get in here. we talked about the other thing earlier, and another thing is swallow your pride. You don't, it's easy to say, well, I don't want to have to, clean out the cages or whatever, right? I mean, whatever, I don't want to do that thing. That thing is boring. I don't want to answer the phone for an hour while, our office manager is out. But if you volunteer to do those things, you show yourself as, hey, you're just helping the organization get through. Another thing to think about is how do you make your boss's life easier? And that's actually a pretty good strategy anytime, but especially when your boss is under stress. And I can tell you, these kind of macroeconomic environments, the boss is under stress. So how can you make the boss's job easier? And this could actually help you too. Right? I mean, it can, if you can make the case.
The first point you were making, now I'm blanking on what it was. I had a thing to add.
Versatile.
We'll circle back to that.
Yeah, no, it's versatile. Volunteer for stuff. Take on,
yes,
be a team player.
I had a emotional intelligence professor in college, and she said that the two most important things you can be, it's not intelligent, it's not nice, it's flexible and adaptable.
Yeah.
So if they can say, will you do this thing? And you say yes, you're good.
Yeah.
So my biggest compliment was at my old job when one of my bosses was like, oh, Addie, she just goes with the flow, which is probably the least accurate description of me ever outside of the workplace.
Yeah.
Very much do not like the flow. I don't like it. I want to make the flow.
Yeah.
But in the workplace, I was like, hey, I did it right. And then the other half is making your boss's life easier and volunteering to do the things. I found what helps me do that is actually caring about the mission of where I work. And as part of making that intentional choice of your career is like, it's a lot easier when I was working at a doggy daycare to not complain about painting the fence or painting the walls because I really cared about what we were doing there. And it's the same thing with the vet office now. Is like, it's not fun to restrain a chihuahua that's trying to eat your face. But when someone needs help restraining the chihuahua so they can give them the vaccines and do the things we need to do for it, it's kind of like, no, I really believe in making this animal feel better. I'm going to do this thing that's really unpleasant.
Yeah. Well, and so, and what I heard in there is that it starts with self-awareness. You know what's important to you. You knew, and you were intentional. You were self-aware, and then you intentionally, you chose this field, and you're right. I think studies have shown that if you believe in the purpose of the organization, it doesn't have to be your job, but whatever organization you're a part of, if you believe in it, you're willing to do more things and willing to make more sacrifices on behalf of that. Because you believe in the overarching principle. So that certainly applies in a for-pay world as it is in yours. Help your bosses out, help them understand what the organization is trying to do, and come to them with ideas about, hey, this is how, or at least information too. That's like, hey, I know you're looking at X, Y, and Z. Let me give you this. Let me give you a hand there. And let's see if I can help you solve your problems. And again, don't overlook the fact that, this idea of a team player and a corporate citizen, versatility, all of these things will come out. And these are all listed in Harvard Business Review article that we'll include a link for. But, do the things that are not mandatory. One, you'll learn something. Two, it'll help the organization, and three, it'll make you look like you really want to be a part of that organization. And I tell you, people that make it clear they want to be a part of it are going to do a lot better. Again, it doesn't guarantee anything. You've got that 80-10-10 rule. You got that 10% chance out there that you're not going to get what you want just because of luck. But 90% chance of getting what you want by being intentional, by working hard, by going out there and doing that, remembering what the organization is about. There'll be plenty of opportunity when you can be a little more selfish and you don't have to worry about the organization, because and this is basically, just rewind a year ago, you weren't in the professional workforce yet, but unemployment was under 4%, which is huge. May have even been very close to 3%, which is, it was 50-year low or something like that. And so the competition for workers at that point is very high. And we'll get to another point when businesses are competing for workers, and it's not gonna it's not going to move the numbers very much on these wealth charts. Although I do have one thing at the end here I want to share with you to give you a little bit of hope for the long term.
Please.
But the main point here is that there will come a time when the shoe's on the other foot, and you'll have advantages, and you'll be able to negotiate for better salaries, better bonus programs, better compensation, better working conditions, whatever it is that's important to you, because workers are going to be in demand, and companies and employers are going to want, they're going to want the people that can do the job the best for them. And that'll come. That time is not right now, though. So right now, the cards are stacked against you, but you can still play your hand. You can still play your hand, and it's there. Now, collectively, as a generation, you guys, the numbers aren't going to be great, but individually, there's a lot more opportunity out there than maybe it seems.
There's definitely, especially thinking about the analogy though of like, you don't have to run faster than the bear, just your friend. There's a bit of guilt, at least for me, and I know a lot of other people who politically and socially fall in the same area I do, of being selfish like that, because I don't want to succeed at the cost of other people. Like, I don't want my success to be the reason why someone else is poor, which is part of why I really don't like Satan himself. I mean, the CEO of Amazon, because it's I don't want to leave anybody behind. That's really it. And I see that a lot in my generation, is that we're all kind of looking at each other like, this really sucks. We kind of only have each other right now that understands what we're going through, but then watching like one by one, somebody gets hired and then becomes well, you should just work harder. And that's not the case. It's not just you should work harder kind of situation. And there's a lot of barriers also to being intentional about your career, like education being so expensive. I mean, looking at going back to school right now, I'm trying to make it really prolong that decision as long as possible, because last time I decided to go to school and spent a decent chunk of money on it, it didn't, it's a bachelor's degree that's great, but it's not in something I want to do, and I'm not going to like use it the way that I intended to moving forward. There are plenty of little moments, but it's really hard for a lot of people, and I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunities I've had in my life and the family I grew up in. But there's a lot of people in my generation who don't have that, especially like people I'm close to, my friends in Nashville, are looking at the situation like, I can't do what I want to do because I have no way to get there. I can't even get in the door. Like, I was lucky enough to have 5 years of volunteering when I was a child that put me in the door for the first animal care job, and now I've been able to get ahead. But now I'm talking to other people who are interested in that field or want to do something else that they've never done before, and getting rejected because they don't have the education, but they don't have the money to get the education, and then they can't get a job to get the money to get the education. It's kind of a vicious cycle. So there's definitely, I recognize that working under the constraints that we are in now economically, it's necessary to like work harder than the person you're next to. But I also, I don't want that to be how it is forever. And if there's a point, I say if, because who knows if the world's just going to explode in the next 5 years.
Unlikely.
Or at the end of this year.
Unlikely.
Yeah, well, it was unlikely to get a pandemic, so here we are.
Not so much. Pandemics happen.
Well, let's talk about murder hornets then.
Predictably. Well, murder hornets aren't really a thing. But I hear what you're saying, and I agree. But the thing, I agree with everything you say. I mean, it would be great if we could just say, you know what, everybody needs to be able to pursue, and our government is set up for people to be able to pursue their happiness, but it doesn't, there's no time limit on that, and there's no single path. And so, for your friends who are struggling with a career change or launching a career at this point in time, there's definitely a path there, and as I said, the path is narrower now than it would be ordinarily. I mean, career transition's never easy, even at the best of times, because of that lack of relevant experience that you can point to, and you need to find ways to demonstrate other capabilities that you have, so that people feel comfortable being willing to give you a chance to, give you a slot in a program for education, give you a job that they're going to pay you for. There's a certain element of trust that has to be there, that you're going to be able to do the job. And those it's more challenging for sure, but it's there. You just, people need to think about, okay, and it's back to the intention, right? If I know who I am and I know where I want to go, there's so many paths to get to any place, and it's a matter of just figuring that out, and that will mean sacrifice, and sometimes, that means sacrifice for years. I think about your uncle. He started his education when he was 25. He didn't finish until he was almost 40.
Wow.
And in the meantime, he got married and had a family, and he was working 2 and 3 jobs in addition to going to these graduate programs in medicine. And now he's a tremendously valuable, tremendously successful guy. But it took him decades, in his case, to get to where he wanted to go. And that's the kind of, if you're, if you really want something, so that's back to self-awareness, right? If you really know what you want, then you'll know if the price that it will take, that you'll have to pay to get there, is worth it. And it may be, and it may not be, but the path is definitely there. It's just tougher right now, and it's going to be tougher for a little while yet.
And it does also depend on other factors. Like, I agree with you to an extent, but then also just the fact that the workforce is not, your individual choices they don't exist in a vacuum. Your individual path doesn't exist in a vacuum. And that's what makes it, that's really where the guilt comes from, is knowing that me getting a job that I really want, that I'm barely qualified for, and potentially edging out somebody else who had the qualifications, but they were just like, I don't know, we like her better. And understanding that there are other factors that are way outside of any of our control, like race or gender or sexuality, gender identity, that do play into your just hiring habits. That becomes the issue. There was a point of this, and now I've lost it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's hard as someone in Gen Z and on that millennial bridge kind of situation and entering the workforce now, to feel like I feel completely in control of my career, but I'm also graduating from a private university with a bachelor's of science, debt-free, with a fairly wealthy family that can support me if things go seriously south at any point. But that's not the case for a lot of my peers. And start at the point again. Now I've lost it again.
My response to that, and we'll need to wrap it up here, but my response to that is, there's things about life that do suck, for sure. And it is aggravating, frustrating, sad. I mean, there's tons of emotions that we can have about the fact that we do live in a world that is biased, that is prejudiced, and it's for things that shouldn't matter. But your own situation there, I mean, the people that hired you to do your current job, they judged you to be qualified, and and you're proving yourself to be qualified. In your 5 weeks of work, the feedback that you've got to this point has been very positive. And so, don't say that you're not qualified, or don't run yourself down. But having said that, I think it's absolutely valid to say, hey, let's separate kind of finding your role in the way you're going to contribute to our society, in the working world. Separate that from the equity, the equity we want people to live. And let me finish this point, and then you can make your point. But because I think a lot of that second point is about public policy. And you say that it's bad that people can't get hired because they're a woman, or because they're black, or because they're handicapped or handicapped. That's my old vocabulary coming through there. But have some disability of some sort. We have federal laws, and we should have federal laws to prevent that, and to give people who feel like that has been the action. Should have some recourse, and we backslid on that quite significantly here in the last 10 years or so, and that's frustrating. But those are two different. Finding your individual path and the job, the role, the place that you feel you can make your contribution that will make you most satisfied and happiest with your life is separate from, hey, we need to do better by our fellow people in our society. And I think don't let we can feel guilty that we're not providing the second, but don't let that be the thing that stops you from striving on the first. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I get that. And it doesn't stop me personally. There's definitely a lot of like thoughts that I wrestle with on a daily basis, especially with current conversations about using your own skills for, the larger movement and this massive racial equity movement that's sprung out of George Floyd's murder. And there's kind of like the joking part of me is like, so do I cat sit for Black people for free? Because I don't really know what to do with my skills. But there's also what I was getting at earlier and got sidetracked on was, it feels, as a young, very privileged white woman, it feels very almost hollow to tell other people who are my same age, who don't have the same privileges I do, who don't look the way I do, like, oh, just make choices with intention and you'll be okay. Because sometimes it doesn't matter how much a young Black trans woman makes choices with intention. She still might not get the job she's qualified for. She still might not get something that she's going for with purpose. Just because she's Black and trans, and that has certain connotations that people look at her with. So it's hard for me to like fully get behind that, even though I know that that's not like something I can change right now with where I'm currently at. Just it's hard for me to get behind the message of like, oh, you just have to live with intention and it'll be okay, because that's not necessarily, there's a lot of other factors that do come in with that, and you'll probably be the most okay possible living with intention. But
Well, and
sometimes
okay doesn't have a time limit on it, right? I mean, you may not be okay for the next 5 years, but so you're right. In the short term, and it's very, the job that that she wants is kind of like, that's not going to be available to you because of all this crappy stuff. That definitely falls in maybe for a Black trans woman, it's not 80-10-10. Maybe it's 50-40-10. Or something like that, right? That 40% of the time she's not going to get what she deserves because of these other things that are in the way. Definitely life experience is going to be different for people, but at the same time, there's really no other option. Giving up isn't an option. Opting out isn't an option. You can't. I mean, you can opt out of life, but how sad and tragic is that? I mean, there's so much to be written. And especially if you're a young person, so much to be going ahead, that it's you got to stay, you got to opt in, you got to stay engaged, and the path to success is through intention. And I believe what Martin Luther King did is that the arc of the universe bends toward justice. It'll get better. The environment will get better. People's attitudes change for better and for worse. But the way forward individually, despite whatever happiness around you, and the way to go forward individually, self-awareness, set your intentions, and then decide what you're willing to sacrifice to achieve what you want. So I think at that point, I think we better wrap it up here.
I have one final question to leave you with. That's not necessarily something you have to answer immediately, but as someone who hasn't seen much of the world and hasn't had many life experiences and is watching a lot of things happen for the first time, the current political climate really feels like a breaking point, that something has to give. We are reaching the critical mass. Something's going to change. Does it feel that way for you as well, as someone who has seen social movements, has seen things come and go and rise and fall? Does right now feel that way to you, or does it still just feel like it's yet another political division that will get shoved under the rug in months, years?
So a lot there.
Oh yeah.
So the short answer is these are perilous times for sure, but they are not unprecedented. And so you can go back and look in the history of the world. You can even look in the history of the U.S. and there will have been times. Look at the Civil War. I mean, we went to war with each other once. And so we're not there yet. Could it happen again? Of course. Could Nazi Germany happen here? Of course. It's happened before. And that tells you that it could happen again. The fact that it has happened. So don't I don't accept that. Oh no, we're different somehow. We're different in a lot of ways, but we are human nature is the same and pretty much immutable, I think. So If it's happened with people before, it could happen with people again.
Yep.
But having said that, I think we know enough. There's enough people who are advocating, but the future isn't written. It's not written for us individually, and it's not written collectively either. And the election in November will go a long way to telling us: are we the kind of country that is going to be the best version of ourselves, or, and this will be my politics coming through here, are we going to continue to be, kind of the nationalist, racist country that an awful lot of us seem to want, and by neglect, because of lack of participation in the very fundamental thing that determines our path, which is elections. Many of us have just opted out and said, I don't really care. One is the same as the other. There's not much choice. There's always a choice. There's always something that aligns better or worse with what you believe, and you should vote accordingly. But I'm not pessimistic about where we are, in the sense that I don't feel like this is going to break. But at the same time, I don't say, hey, it's going to be okay. It's just, it'll be what we make it. People, what we collectively do, the decisions you and I and everybody else in this country make, and in the world too. It's not just a U.S. issue here, right? I mean, there's tons of places where we're seeing this happen. So, no, I don't. My own view is that there are many chapters to be written, but the outcome is not determined one way or the other yet. We'll know a lot more later. All right, we'll make that the last word at the end. Let's see, follow-up items. Do we have anything that needs to be researched? This came up here. I don't think we did.
Not that I can think of.
All right, and I didn't count any swearing, so no.
I very nearly did, but I said frick, so.
Oh well, I didn't catch it, so all right. So you avoided the dollar fine for swearing.
So much.
Very good. All right, so I think that's it for us today.
All right. Well, then our lovely listeners, all three of them, can find us at awkwardfamilyconversations.com. We have a Twitter and a Facebook, all Awkward Family Conversations. The Twitter's at Awkward Family Conversations, right?
I think it's Awkward Family C1, but we may have exceeded we got truncated.
Okay, so find us at Awkward Family Cone on Twitter. And let us know what you think. He'll post the link wherever he can find it, wherever he can put it. And we would love any questions or suggestions or corrections, or, try to keep your general anger yelling to a minimum. If you're going to Yelp review us, maybe make it nice. But I guess we'll just sign off here with our next theme, which will be, why can't I make enough money to live on? All
right, another easy question, right? So sounds good. Thank you, Ed. I love you, and I'll see you soon.
All right, love you too, Dad.
Bye.
I'm going to let